She comes to the well alone. This is the first detail most people read past. In the ancient Near Eastern world, and in 1st century Samaria specifically, drawing water was communal work. Women came in groups in the morning or the evening in the cooler hours. The well was where you saw people, where information moved, where the social texture of a village maintained itself. She comes at the 6th hour. The 6th hour is noon, the hottest part of the day, the hour when no one else is there. The writer of the Gospel of John, the most deliberately constructed of the 4 Gospels, the one whose every detail is placed with architectural precision, does not tell us why she comes at noon. He simply records that she does and lets the reader sit with it. You already know why. The well is Jacob's well, outside the Samaritan city of Sychar. Jacob's well is one of the few locations in the Gospels that can be identified with near certainty in the archaeological record, a site that has been venerated continuously since at least the 4th century AD, and that sits at the base of Mount Gerizim, the sacred mountain of the Samaritan people. The well itself is real. It still exists. It is approximately 30 meters deep, cut through solid rock, and it still holds water. The geography matters for a reason the text will make explicit later, but which the original reader of John's Gospel would have understood immediately. Sychar is in Samaria. Jesus is a Jew from Galilee. Jews and Samaritans do not share vessels, do not share meals, and by the social conventions of 1st century Palestine, do not typically share conversations across the boundary of their mutual contempt. There is a 400-year history of religious and ethnic hostility embedded in the distance between where Jesus is sitting and where this woman is walking from. She is carrying a water jar. He has no bucket. This is approximately AD 27 to 30. The Roman province of Judea is under the governorship of Pontius Pilate. The Samaritan people, descendants of the mixed population that remained in the northern territories after the Assyrian conquest of 722 BC, who developed their own version of Israelite religion centered on Mount Gerizim rather than Jerusalem, exist in a state of sustained low-level hostility with the Jewish community to the south. The disciples have gone into the city to buy food. Jesus is alone at the well, and a woman who has chosen the 1 hour of the day when she will not encounter anyone she knows is walking toward him. He speaks first. "Will you give me a drink?" 4 words, a request so ordinary it barely registers, except that in the context of 1st century Jewish-Samaritan relations, it is not ordinary at all. A Jewish man is asking a Samaritan woman to hand him her vessel so he can drink from it. He's asking her to share a container that, in his own religious tradition, her touch has made ritually impure. She notices this immediately. "You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?" The writer of John adds a parenthetical for his audience. For Jews do not associate with Samaritans. He is not explaining something obscure. He is flagging that what is happening in this exchange is already, from the first sentence, operating outside the normal rules. Jesus' response does not answer her question. This is a pattern that runs through the entire conversation, and it is worth paying attention to because it is not evasion. It is redirection. Every time the woman tries to contain the conversation within a framework she already has, religious tradition, ethnic identity, social expectation, theological debate, Jesus moves the conversation to a different level. If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you living water. She responds practically and correctly, given what she knows. "Sir, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water?" She is not being obtuse. She is being accurate. He has no bucket. The well is 30 meters deep. If he is claiming to have water to give, the physical situation contradicts the claim. Her response is the response of a person who is listening carefully and evaluating what she hears against observable reality. And then she asks a question that reveals she is also listening theologically. Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did also his sons and his livestock? Jacob, the patriarch whose well this is, the figure who represents, in Samaritan religious identity, the common ancestor of both peoples. Before the division, before the hostility, before 400 years of mutual contempt. She's not just asking about water logistics. She's asking about authority, about lineage, about whether this stranger at a well has any standing to claim something Jacob himself could not provide. Most people who know this story have been taught to focus on the 5 husbands. And the 5 husbands matter. We will get there. But the conversation arrives at the 5 husbands through a theological exchange of extraordinary precision that most Sunday school versions of this story skip entirely. Jesus speaks about living water, water that becomes a spring welling up to eternal life. She asks for this water so she will not have to keep coming to the well. The request is still practical. She is still working within the framework of physical thirst, physical labor, the noon hour alone. But something has shifted. She is asking. And then Jesus says, "Go, call your husband and come back." She says, "I have no husband." And Jesus says, "You are right when you say you have no husband. The fact is, you have had 5 husbands, and the man you now have is not your husband. What you have just said is quite true." Here is where the story breaks in 2 directions, and both directions reveal something the single-note moralizing version of this story consistently misses. The first direction is the one most preachers take: the 5 husbands as evidence of a sinful life, the woman as a social outcast whose shame is precisely why she comes at noon, and Jesus' knowledge of her history as the miraculous revelation that converts her. This reading is not wrong exactly, but it is incomplete in ways that distort the story significantly, because the text of John chapter 4 does not describe the 5 husbands as sin. It does not use the word sin in connection with her marital history. It does not call her an adulteress. It does not frame her past as the thing that needs to be overcome before she can receive what Jesus is offering. Jesus states her history as a fact, accurately, without condemnation. And then the conversation continues. The second direction, and this is the reading that the historical and social context of 1st century Samaria opens up, requires understanding what 5 marriages likely meant for a woman in this specific time and place. Divorce in the 1st century Jewish and Samaritan world was almost exclusively initiated by men. A woman could not divorce her husband under the legal conventions of the period. What she could do, what happened to women who moved through multiple marriages, was be divorced, be widowed, or some combination of both. 5 husbands. The text does not tell us she left them. It does not tell us she pursued them. It tells us she had them, past tense, and that the man she is currently with is not her husband. A woman with 5 former husbands in 1st century Samaria is not necessarily a woman who pursued 5 relationships. She may be a woman who was handed from household to household, widowed, divorced, discarded, and who is now in a relationship outside formal marriage because formal marriage, at this point in her life, may not be available to her, or may not be something she is willing to enter again. The noon hour is not necessarily shame, it may be exhaustion. If this reading of her story is landing differently than you expected, send this to someone who has only ever heard the version that makes her the problem. The text is more careful than that reading allows. She does not argue with Jesus' statement about her marital history. She does not defend herself or explain. She does something more interesting. She changes the subject to theology. "Sir, I can see that you are a prophet. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews claim that the place where we must worship is in Jerusalem." This has been read as deflection, as a woman trying to avoid the personal discomfort of the conversation about her husbands by retreating into abstract religious debate. But read it again, she has just had her entire personal history named by a stranger at a well, a stranger who knew things he had no way of knowing. And her response is not to collapse, not to weep, not to defend herself. Her response is to ask the most important theological question in the 400-year dispute between Jews and Samaritans. Where is the right place to worship God? This is not deflection. This is the response of a woman who has just realized she is talking to someone worth asking the real question. Jesus answers her question directly, not with evasion, not with redirection this time. She has asked the central theological dispute of her world, Jerusalem or Gerizim, Jewish temple or Samaritan mountain, and he gives her an answer that dissolves the question entirely. Woman, believe me, a time is coming when you will worship the Father, neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. Neither. Not the Jewish answer, not the Samaritan answer. A third answer that neither tradition has yet articulated. The place of worship is being superseded by something the place was always pointing toward, spirit and truth, the text says. Worshippers who worship in spirit and in truth. And then he says something that he has said to almost no one else in the entire Gospel of John. She asks, I know that Messiah is coming. When he comes, he will explain everything to us. And Jesus says, I, the one speaking to you, I am he. Stop. This is the only place in the synoptic tradition, the three Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, where Jesus openly and directly identifies himself as the Messiah to anyone before the crucifixion. In those Gospels, the messianic identity is guarded, disclosed obliquely, acknowledged when others name it, and immediately hushed. The pattern is so consistent that scholars have given it a name, the Messianic secret. John's Gospel operates differently, but even within John, explicit self-disclosure of this kind is rare and significant, and the person Jesus chooses for this disclosure, the first person in the Gospel of John to whom he says, without metaphor, without parable, without qualification, I am the Messiah, is a Samaritan woman at a well at noon. Not a disciple, not a synagogue leader, not a priest or a scholar or a man with social standing in any of the communities that surrounded him. Her. The disciples return from the city at this exact moment. John chapter 4 verse 27. They were surprised to find him talking with a woman. The text notes this, surprised, and then adds that none of them asked what he wanted or why he was talking with her. They saw. They were surprised. They said nothing. And then the woman does something that the writer of John records with a single sentence that contains, in its simplicity, the entire argument of her story. She left her water jar. Oh, she came to the well to get water. She is leaving without water. The object she carried to the well, the reason she came, the practical necessity that brought her to the one place at the 1 hour she could avoid everyone she knew, is sitting by the well. She forgot it, or she left it deliberately, or, and this is the reading that the structure of the text seems to support, she left it because she suddenly had something more urgent to carry than water. She goes into the city. The city she avoided by coming at noon. The people she did not want to encounter, the community that knew her history, her 5 husbands, the man she was currently living with outside the terms of formal marriage. She goes back to all of it, and she says, come, see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Messiah? Subscribe if this story is reshaping how you read the New Testament. The next story in this series follows a woman whose loyalty crossed every boundary the ancient world said it shouldn't, and whose name appears in the genealogy of Jesus. Here is the detail that most readings of this story treat as a footnote, but that is actually the structural climax of the entire passage. The people of the city come out to see Jesus, not because of anything Jesus did in the city, not because of a miracle, not because of a teaching, not because of any demonstration of power or authority directed at the Samaritan community, because of what she said. John chapter 4, verse 39. Many of the Samaritans from that city believed in him because of the woman's testimony. The woman's testimony. She is, in the precise technical sense of the word, the first evangelist in the Gospel of John, the first person to carry a message about Jesus to a community that had not yet encountered him, the first person whose words cause others to believe. And she is doing this to a Samaritan city, across every boundary, ethnic, religious, gender, social, that the world of the text said the message could not cross. Now here is what John chapter 4, verse 29 actually says, and most translations smooth it over in a way that loses something important. She says, "Come, see a man who told me everything I ever did. Everything I ever did. Not, he told me about my 5 husbands. Not, he revealed my past to me. Everything I ever did," which is either a significant exaggeration or the testimony of a woman who experienced a conversation that felt so complete, so seen, so entirely accurate in its account of who she was, that she describes it in terms of totality. And then the question, could this be the Messiah? In the Greek, this question is constructed with a particle, metai, that implies she expects a negative answer. Could this possibly be the Messiah? The form of the question is almost self-deprecating, as if she is aware that what she is about to claim sounds implausible, that a Samaritan woman at a well at noon is perhaps not the most obvious recipient of a messianic disclosure, and she is framing the question in a way that gives her listeners room to disagree. And they don't disagree, they come out to see. The city asks Jesus to stay. He stays for 2 days. And John chapter 4, verse 42 records what happens at the end of those 2 days, what the Samaritans say to the woman after they have encountered Jesus directly. "We no longer believe just because of what you said. Now we have heard for ourselves, and we know that this man really is the Savior of the world. We no longer believe just because of what you said." There is a texture to this sentence that is easy to miss. It is not a dismissal of her testimony. It is a report of what her testimony produced. A community that moved from second-hand belief based on her words to first-hand belief based on their own encounter. Her testimony was the bridge that carried an entire city from the well at noon to 2 days of conversation with the person she met there. She left her water jar. That sentence keeps returning because the writer of John placed it there for exactly this reason, to mark the moment when the thing she came for became less important than the thing she found. She came for water. She left carrying something that had no container, and she went back to the city she had been avoiding at noon, in the full heat of the day, with no jar. The water jar is still at the well. That is the image the Gospel of John leaves in the reader's hands. Not a miracle, not a healing, not a dramatic confrontation with religious authorities. A clay jar sitting beside a 30-meter well outside Sychar, while its owner walks back into the city she had been carefully avoiding for long enough that noon had become her hour. It is one of the quietest images in the entire New Testament, and one of the most complete. What's striking, and this is where the story of the woman at the well connects to something that has nothing to do with first-century Samaria, is the specific mechanics of how she was seen. Jesus did not fix her situation. The text does not record that her circumstances changed after the conversation. The man she was living with is not mentioned again. The 5 former marriages are not resolved into a tidy narrative of restoration. She walks back into the same life she walked away from, to the same city, to the same people who knew her history. What changed is that someone had looked at the full record of her life. Everything she ever did, she says, and had not looked away. That is what she goes back to tell them. Not a doctrine, not a theological argument about Jerusalem versus Gerizim, not even a clear answer to the question she had been carrying since the conversation began. Come see a man who told me everything I ever did. The testimony is not about what he taught. It is about what he knew, and the fact that knowing it did not end the conversation, that the knowing was the beginning of the conversation, not the conclusion of it. The noon hour is worth sitting with one more time before this story closes. She chose it because it was empty, because the people who knew her history would not be there, because the weight of being known, being seen in the specific uncomfortable way that a small community sees its members, had made the hottest hour of the day preferable to the cooler hours when she would have to navigate all of that. And then a stranger at the well named her history more accurately than anyone in the city could have, and she went back at noon in the full heat without her jar. The very hour she had chosen for its emptiness became the hour she walked back into the fullness of the city, carrying something she had not come to the well to find. The thing she had been avoiding, being known, being seen, existing in the presence of people who had a complete account of who she was, had just happened at the well, at the hands of a stranger, and the experience of it had been different enough from what she feared that she was willing to try the city again. There is a specific kind of person this story is written for, not the person who has never been known and is afraid of it, not the person who has a clean history and worries about minor imperfections. The story is written for the person who has enough history that the noon hour looks reasonable, who has made enough choices, or had enough choices made for them, that the cooler hours feel unavailable, who has organized their life around the practical management of being seen and has become, through years of practice, quite good at not being encountered. John places this person at the center of the most theologically dense conversation in his gospel, the conversation where worship is redefined, where the messianic secret is broken, where the first evangelist of the story is commissioned, without being asked, without being trained, without being told she has any standing to do what she does. She just goes, with no jar, into the noon. Type left my jar if something in this story named a thing you have been carrying longer than you planned. Type knew her story. If the woman at the well was familiar, but this reading shifted something. Or type the noon hour, because sometimes the hour you chose for its emptiness is exactly where the conversation finds you. The next story in this series follows a woman whose loyalty crossed every line the ancient world said it couldn't. A woman who sheltered enemies, betrayed her city, and ended up in the genealogy of Jesus. Her name is Rahab, and the part of her story that most people skip is the part that explains everything else. Come back for it.